This is Rosterwatch, Rewatch. This is presented to you by the Flex Network. We are comprised of one Flex Shane at Seeley, SEELEY_Shane, and Alan Seslowski, aka Season Long Says, at ALANSESLOWSKY, and I am Flex Matt, and we are a nation. Okay, we have came up with a brainchild. Okay, a brainwave to airwave episodic episode of just epic proportion. We are here to do some sort of a have you ever seen this show, The Bachelor? Okay. What about The Bachelorette? Same show. Okay. Your wives love it. We secretly like it a little bit to catch it on the sidebar. But really, what's great about it is when they sit around afterwards and they chit chat and they do some type of a talking episode about what's great about the show. You know, you might have seen this also known as Talking Dead, after Chris Hardwick watches the show with the fans, and then we speak about it as fans. And that's what we are. We are a nation under God, indivisible, between the fantasy world and real life. We are a nation, and we are here to represent Rosterwatch. Sorry, excuse me. I'm getting hyped. I'm getting extremely hyped over here. At Rosterwatch on Twitter. You can find them on Sirius XM with Alex Dunlap, Byron Lambert, and the smelly, disgusting, vile Trash Man. The Trash Man is exactly one thing. He is the reason why back in the 50s or whenever it happened that they went to the waters and they dug with those pans in the dirt and they shook the pans. They shook it for hours on end until they found one golden nugget. And that is the Trash Man. He is the golden nugget to this entire thing. You can spend hours listening to the Trash Man, but all we're doing is sifting through until we find that little piece of gold. At Rosterwatch, this is the Flex Network's Rosterwatch Rewatch episode. We are going to be going over episode 158. Rosterwatch podcast. Download them on Apple Podcasts. Rosterwatch. Follow them on Twitter at Rosterwatch. Follow us on Twitter at the Flex Network 1. We are here to review episode 158, which is the fantasy picks and fades of 2019 in redraft by round. Let me first describe to you the things that Rosterwatch does to create this nation. They are at the Senior Bowl, putting sensors in these smelly, sweaty pads to gain proprietary metrics that they use to help us dominate our fantasy leagues every single year. Rosterwatch has a pro membership that is one of the least expensive pro memberships in the industry, in the game, guaranteeing fantasy domination for cheaper than a fair trade cup of coffee. Fair trade, we all love fair trade. We all love cups of coffee, especially me. And you know what happened the other day, actually? This is just a kind of funny story, okay? My better half texted me and said, I hate fantasy football season, ... It's a two-part text. It's a two-parter. I was rocked with that. I hate fantasy football season, ... I was rocked with that. Then the second text came along and it said, because you become so emotionally unavailable. And then I slammed a ... right back, and that's about as long as it took me to say this. Nobody hates fantasy football season. Of course we don't. But we may be a little emotionally unavailable, and that's because we are freaks. Okay? We are fantasy football. This is what we do. We are here for you, the nation. We have at Sully from Houston, the BVIC, Eagles fan. Catch us all on the Rosterwatch comment section, as we will be slaying the information all year long. And please stay tuned on this show, because at the end, the Flex Network will have our 3 boldest calls on the year, presented by Sealy Shane at Alan Seslowski, if you can remember how to spell it. We will say it for you later on. And Flex Matt, our 3 boldest flex calls on the year. Starting first, episode 158. Follow them on Twitter at Rosterwatch and on your Apple Podcast. I believe they're a couple reviews away from giving out some free pro memberships. Go there, smash it hard. And while you're there, why don't you open up your SiriusXM app and go to your on-demand content for Rosterwatch. You throw your headphones on, you go to the 3rd segment, and you crank it up, as Alex will tell Ani Sridhar to pump up the jams, Ani. Pump up the jams. And win your fantasy football league by listening to and following at Rosterwatch and at the Flex Network 1. In the first round, as we go through our favorite picks and fades of 2019 provided by the Rosterwatch crew, they are saying that, I think it was Byron that had said, or maybe it was Alex, that James Conner, David Johnson, Zeke Elliott, he's got reservations about drafting them in the first round. Byron specifically being out on James Conner because in order to have James Conner where you're getting him, you would have to choose between guys like Chubb, Julio, etc. And he likes those guys better than a James Conner, a David Johnson, and a Zeke Elliott. Flex Network, what do you think about this? Are we out on James Conner in the first round over a Julio Jones, over a Nick Chubb? Or are we, how do we feel about this? Says, what do you think?
Oh, I still like James Conner in the first round. The thing with Nick Chubb, and I wouldn't be surprised if he's the NFL's rushing touchdown leader. It's that it's not like if someone's Kareem Hunt is coming back. Now, again, that you're not going to worry now what happens in week 10, but that is going to happen at some point. So it picked 7, 8, 9, 10. Sure. I still like Nick Chubb. We're not going to worry about Hunt coming back, but James Conner is locked and loaded as an RB1 with presumably good offense. I don't see a ton of difference between the two. I know Jalen Samuels is one of the most premium handcuffs in all of fantasy football, but I think it's more of a coin toss rather than a sure thing bet. So I usually agree with a lot of the takes that Byron has here, but specifically just to push him out of the first round altogether, James Conner, I'm dubious of that. And I would think that he's still in play around the end of the first round for a team that just doesn't want to go wide receiver.
Now, Shane, obviously, I don't think we're pushing James Conner out of the first round. Just that, obviously, if everybody is slayed down through the first 11 picks and James Conner is there at 12, I think we're probably saying we like James Conner at 12, just like what said. But do you think James Conner would be completely pushed out of the first round by the time this is all said and done, Shane? What do you got?
Honestly, no, I don't think so. I think that at this point, the fever for running backs is so high that people are just willing to take the running back over an elite wide receiver. I mean, you look at the other wide receivers that are going ahead of him. Michael Thomas and Julio Jones are the 2 guys there. And I guess the questions you're going to have to ask yourself is, what are you always more comfortable with? Would you rather lock down the Steelers backfield, which is consistently been one of the top backfields to own in fantasy football for the last 5-6 years. All these guys do is they produce, and then like let's not take too much from preseason, but let's just realize that James Conner, when he was in, he looked good, and guess what? He got the damn ball. I think the only time in the Week 3 game that he actually went out was when he came up a little bit lame after a run, so Jalen Samuels jumped in for that one play. Other than that, man, I love James Conner's volume. We know that with Antonio Brown being gone, their throwing game isn't going to be quite as productive. And man, they're going to feed Conner the ball. And guess what, man? Like, I think a lot of people think of Conner as somebody who kind of came out of nowhere, which is one of the reasons Byron said that he didn't really trust him. But that's because he was recovering from freaking cancer, man.
Cancer.
From freaking cancer. So when this guy's got the guts, he's got the intestinal fortitude to still go participate in the combine while he's recovering from cancer. I think this is a guy that you want on your team. He's a guy you want to cheer for. He's a local Pitt guy, and I think that he's going to get the touches. And I have no reservation taking James Conner in the late first round.
Yeah, Shane, you said about him wanting to compete even though he was going through recovery. I don't even like to go to work if I have a cold. So yeah. I'm one of the biggest pussies I know.
Hey, I stubbed my toe and I'm out for a week. Okay.
Seriously.
This guy was recovering from cancer and got drafted in the 3rd round of the NFL.
And the other last thing that they said is that, a lot of times you hear come out of nowhere, but so often running back does. Kareem Hunt, even though, he was a 3rd rounder, Arian Foster in his heyday, RB1 was undrafted or a 7th round or something crazy like that. Running back, they do come out of nowhere sometimes. I mean, and obviously it happens at every position. Tom Brady was a 6th rounder, is an outlier pick, but coming out of nowhere sometimes doesn't mean that they weren't talented and they didn't have they couldn't do it. So I don't know if we should use that as the benchmark of who's going to be good and who's not going to be good.
I'm glad you brought up Michael Thomas, Shane, because Alex had said shortly after this that who he's kind of staying away from this year is Michael Thomas, because he likes Odell, Dalvin Cook, probably a little bit of Juju Smith-Schuster, and mainly because he believes that the passing volume is going to be reduced this year for Michael Thomas, but also stating that, and this is something that Rosterwatch does really, really nice. They have their, their, what do you call it? Their fails per week or weekly. Busts. Yeah, busts and monsters. Okay, so Michael Thomas's bust rate last year in PPR was 19.44%, which their bust rate is when you get less than 10 points, fantasy points per week. That was 19.44%. Odell's bust rate was only 12.5%. Julio Jones is 11.7%. Now, a higher Devontae Adams bust rate at 17%, but still all 3 options significantly better than Michael Thomas's bust rate. And of course, our guy Hopkins.
What's an acceptable bus rate? What's the benchmark for that? Like, what's a good and bad bus rate?
Well, it looks to me here with, again, Hopkins only a 3% bus rate. I mean, come on, 3.12 bus rate weekly for not scoring 10 points. I would have to envision that if Devontae Adams is busting at a 17% rate, and he's the number one or number 2 fantasy wide receiver of the year, I would have to say that would be the Mendoza line at about a 17% bust rate.
I think too, Matt, it's also, when you look at those other players, it's not necessarily the bust rate that you look at this level. It's also the upside. I mean, who do you think can go out there and put up 25 to 30 points in a week?
So hold on. On the upside, so Alex goes on to state that the monster plays for them, so essentially the upside weeks, which are games with 20 to 25 points or higher per week, Julio has a very high monster rate, games above 20 points. Odell and he was saying that he could see that Odell would have a high monster rate this year in that prolific offense with the Browns. So again, Shane, I'll let you continue to elaborate now. The upside play of a Julio Jones, of an Odell, when they have a smaller bust rate, makes Michael Thomas, to me, based off those statistics that are proprietary to them, but I'm sure it's just a counting stat, that Michael Thomas is probably a high fade here. What do you think, Shane?
Well, no, and that's just it, right? You're looking at other options where these guys have a higher floor and a higher ceiling. To me, it's a no-brainer, right? I mean, like Alex went on to say that he's happy taking Michael Thomas as his wide receiver 2, or excuse me, as your wide receiver 1 in round 2. But it's when you're picking a little bit later, right? So I mean, at this point, you're basically just you're going through with a fine-tooth comb and trying to figure out, okay, at a high level, we do not want to screw up our early round picks, right? Because this is going to set the foundation for your team. And especially in a running back starved draft season, I mean, if you're going to go and grab one of these elite wide receivers early on, you want the guys who are going to win you weeks every single week.
Yeah, so moving on to, that was the first round. So moving on to the second round, most recently, Rosterwatch had Matthew Berry on a podcast, and they referenced the fact that in the second round, Matthew Berry is fine with Todd Gurley, but Byron isn't. He says that you'd be taking a risk at where you would have to draft Todd Gurley. And Byron then goes on to reference Jeff Radcliffe's show on SiriusXM, fantasy, or what is it, Pro Football Focus. And Jeff Radcliffe says that you don't need to take risks in fantasy football, again cementing the fact that Gurley is a risk at his ADP. So even, guys, says, I'll bounce this back to you, even if you went wide receiver early, let's say first round, it was Julio Jones, and you are then maybe void of a running back like, Connor, like we had mentioned, Nick Chubb, like we had mentioned, David Johnson, they're all gone. And we're going to get to what Alex says about that. But how do you feel about getting Gurley in the second round at any interjecture here?
Yeah, well, I think there's a couple different spaces. Talking about Gurley in the early second round is way different than talking about him at the end of the second round, based on just who's there. It's been well documented in our podcast, on DFS Army podcast that I do as well, that that I'm out on Gurley as a second round pick. And again, I think Shane said it before. You've reiterated it, that is it really worth the risk? There's so many other guys there. I've seen the hashtag you put up, Goosey with Gurley. That's funny. I like that. It's just, somebody's going to be wrong. There's people who are like, oh my God, I can't believe you're not going to take last year's number 1 overall running back. But the last 5 weeks, or last 3-4 weeks of the season, or 5 weeks if you include the playoffs, he didn't play. He didn't play in the most important game. They picked up CJ Anderson and cut him. They matched. They did the Rams said a lot with their actions. Malcolm Brown was signed to a really healthy offer sheet by the Lions. They matched it immediately. They traded up in the third round to select Darrell Henderson, who's going to be a Chris Thompson-like asset for them. I'm not saying Gurley's not going to be pretty good when he plays, or very good. I'm just saying I can see situations where they're 11-point favorites playing at home against Miami. I don't even know if that's on their schedule. And they might give Gurley a DMP in week 4 or 5 or 8 when you need him. So he'll be good when you have him, but I'm just not sure you're going to have him predictably each week. It's going to be a constant pain in the ass.
Yeah, and I mean, they go on. Alex comes in pretty hard, and they both agree that Dalvin Cook is essentially Rosterwatch's favorite second round draft pick. Are we all in agreement that we are going to go Dalvin Cook over Gurley if faced, even at the end of, wherever they are? Shane, are we going Dalvin Cook over Gurley at all interjectors here?
Oh, I'm cooking in the kitchen with Dalvin Cook, baby. Give me Dalvin Cook. Give me that. I mean, you saw what they did last year in Minnesota, where when he came back healthy, they wanted to give him the ball. We know that they're going to be a running offense this year. I think that they're going to be in positions to score. I mean, Minnesota does have a pretty efficient offense, which means Dalvin Cook is going to do very, very well. But I mean, when you're comparing him directly to Todd Gurley, I think that one of the key points Alex made was that Todd Gurley's production comes with the touches, right? With so many of these running backs, is they get better exponentially as they get touches throughout the game, right? So when is he going to break off that long run? It's not going to be on his 4th or 5th touch. It's going to be on his 16th or 17th touch. So if he's only getting 12, 13 touches a game, he might not have that opportunity to go and break through. As the defense breaks down, he gets stronger. But guess what? If they're going to be giving touches to Malcolm Brown, as a change up back, or Darrell Henderson, if he's going to be the one catching the ball out of the backfield, I just don't think Todd Gurley is going to come up, and he's not going to have that opportunity to put up those 25 to 30-point weeks.
Yeah, the people that are treating Todd Gurley like there's nothing wrong, I think are to use one of Rosterwatch's terms, are treating it with a blind spot. The people that are just like, that totally dismissing him, and I've been guilty of that, probably operating with a similar blind spot on the other side. But I just don't see like a major difference between the health condition of like Sony Michel, who's got knee issues and is on a good team or running team, and Todd Gurley. And look what we're doing with Sony Michel. We're putting him in like the 4th round.
Yeah. Well, again, something that's really kind of awesome about fantasy football is that, you do start and enjoy your team weekly. Guys like Sonny Michel are going in the 4th round purely because there's guys like Flex Shane over here at Steely_Shane, who wears a Patriots jersey absolutely all day, every day, sleeps in it. Okay. There's a lot of those out there. Okay. But yes, we like Sonny Michel here. I don't know if we like him at his ADP, and we might get there here. Now, this is probably the most, the most roster watch thing to say is right here. And this could be the hill that, Season Long Says and I were talking about here, but Alex is happy to take Fournette as early as the 2nd round. Says, what do you think about that?
Oh yeah, no, Fournette was mispriced all season. Where are you going to get a 3-down running back that's capable of catching 50+ passes on a run-first team that is a top 5 draft pedigree? He's had some injuries in the past. He's had, a little bit of off-field, nothing that would deter you from any rational person from seeing he's a good player. Leonard Fournette actually is a really good player. It's not just a guy with opportunity. There's no one threatening his job behind him. He was taken in the 1st round last year for a reason. Because things didn't go exactly as planned, he's being discounted 2 rounds. It makes no sense that he was a 3rd and sometimes 4th round pick early on. In the 2nd round all day.
Yeah, and I'll harken back to the Dalvin Cook thing. There wasn't a lot of first team offense, just spark plays all preseason. There was a couple definitely, but the one that I think was seen and heard the most that really changed things was Dalvin Cook's just phenomenal run in preseason that really pushed up his ADP, but also, it made terrible fantasy football players look better because you just smash the draft button anywhere on Dalvin Cook this year. And what they had talked about was how, of course, the trash man missed the deadline on the handcuff tool this week. Okay. So now Alex had to do it. But of course, we referenced the fact that you can get Alexander Mattison just with the absolute last pick of your draft. So if you are really in on Dalvin Cook, you can go ahead and grab Alexander Mattison at the very end of your draft.
If Fournette and Dalvin Cook are moving up, who are the 2 guys that Alex and Byron are pushing down?
Well, remember, so Gurley is one of the guys that they're pushing down. Derrick Henry, I mean, he's getting to the point where you're taking Derrick Henry in the 4th round now. So actually, let's just jump there because they both like Devontae Freeman and they've got a lot of Devontae Freeman shares. I think because they're the ones that are at training camp. I mean, Byron travels the world to go to training camps, to speak to to hunt these guys down. He sleeps on the sidewalk outside of the stadiums just to get these station IDs and personal interviews that nobody else has. Okay. Devontae Freeman, they're truthers of Devontae Freeman, 100%. And I think that we all follow them and are a little bit ourselves too. We want we want Devontae Freeman to do well. And if he's on all of our teams this year at a value, he's hopefully going to do well. So lots of Derrick Henry in the fourth, but Alex and Byron then too, just completely out on T.Y. Hilton now. And I know I didn't really answer your question about who they were dropping down. In the first 3 rounds, I mean, it's a pretty solid, everyone's, that is there and available is good. Just speaking to who they like a little bit more than others. But once we get to the 4th round, we have to be out on T.Y. in the 4th round. Anybody? I mean, come on. Shane, out on T.Y.
It pains me to say it, but yeah, no, I'm out on Ty. I think that as you start getting into the 5th round, then yeah, you're going to start looking at him again. But Jacoby Brissett, T.Y. Hilton, who I think is going to be a lot more productive. We already talked about this than he was a couple of years ago with Jacoby Brissett. But simply put, I mean, I would rather have guys like your Tyler Lockett's of the world and your Chris Godwins. I mean, we've talked about both these guys all season, right? I mean, early on in draft season, we were getting these guys in the 5th round. We're perfectly happy to get a Chris Godwin or a Tyler Lockett in round 4.
And that's so funny, almost as if you listen to the same podcast later on. Byron has to say that he is a Julian Edelman, just entrancement on Julian Edelman here in the 4th round. Just thinks that he's going to have an absolutely sick year this year.
The all-you-can-eat buffet is what he said, I believe.
Yes, Godwin, Tyler Lockett, great. Alex goes on to, I believe, have a take that I think we are totally in on this too, but we're out on Kenny Golladay at this point. I mean, says Kenny Golladay, there's not been any news at all almost. It's almost as if he's just a guy that's there and you don't even, I mean, is he hurt, right? I don't even know. Like, I haven't heard nothing about Kenny Golladay.
Hey, Shane, get the cockamamie season long says take #ready. I'm convinced Marvin Jones is going to outproduce Kenny Golladay. On the Mike Lombardi podcast, he had said that he had had good information that Matt Stafford's back was still in really bad shape like it was last year. He's going through some personal stuff, Matt Stafford, that is, off the field with his family as well. I'm not convinced that we're going to see a Matt Stafford that's capable of supporting 2 receivers that are in the top 30, say. If I was Jones over Golladay, yeah, I would say Marvin Jones is going to be, he was injured last year. He was off to a pretty good start. He was going in like the 4th, 5th round last year. He's been forgotten about. It wouldn't surprise me at all if Jones over Golladay. So I'm in agreement with you that Golladay in his 4th, 5th round ADP has always been crazy. He feels like a guy that should have been going more in the late 6th, in where Christian Kirk and all those players are going after the Mike Williams and Calvin Ridley tier.
Shane, Matt, what do you think?
I was going to say, Matt, your favorite word this season is arbitrage, right? So we're talking about natural arbitrages here. So we're talking about the same team, Marvin Jones over Kenny Golladay. Or one of the guys that the Rosterwatch boys brought up was Courtland Sutton. I mean, when you look at the architect of these types of players, want to take Courtland Sutton a couple rounds later. They're both in questionable offenses, right? These are both guys that are beasts. They go up, they outbody, they just manhandle defensive backs, right? So if you're looking for a similar profile with a similar offense, why not just get Courtland Sutton a couple rounds later?
Well, or even much, much later, Yeah. I mean, honestly, in my home league, I had to draft Kenny Golladay. Like, it was just obnoxious that everybody had let him fall, even me. I want to say it was like 9th round or something like that.
Ninth round? So, to me, that's a little egregious.
Okay, in your home leagues, this is exactly what the Flex Network does, and it's a thing. The Flex Network flexes by letting your home league mates go ahead and draft kickers or defense, and we're gonna get into this cockamamie stuff where your home leagues, you're just sitting back like a viper. You're just waiting for that innocent bystander to step on some rock near you so you can strike. Okay, Kenny Golladay in the 9th round of a home league. lately, and that I had to take him there. So speaking about round 5 now, Alex says he's just loving smashing the button on a Mike or a Mark Ingram and a Tyler Boyd, and we're definitely okay with that. To me, sometimes I feel we're a little maybe we are disrespecting Mark Ingram a little bit here. I mean, is he not just going to be the 100% like just dominant force on that team? I mean, where else are they going to run the ball outside of Lamar Jackson and Mark Ingram? What if Mark Ingram can catch the ball, okay? But we do. Yes, justice will be served. We love a Justice Hill. Mark Ingram, 3 down, and just feed him the ball all year long. Pass it on 4th, run it on 4th with Lamar, or 3rd and 4th with Lamar Jackson. I think this team could be a highlight team this year. Says, what do you think about Mark Ingram in the 5th?
Yeah, Mark Ingram is one of the players that I'm having some FOMO on. I haven't drafted that much of him. He's 30 years old. He's on a new team, but he is on the run heaviest team. I think that's going to be one of those guys that after 2 weeks, he could be the RB1, and we're all like, oh my God, how did I not see this? He was good in college. He was great in college. He was really good when he played on the Saints. And when he's really good and you've got him as a 5th round pick, it's just going to be one of those guys that I'm like, I should have seen it coming.
Well, and I think Mark Ingram sits in a really nice place in your draft board, because if you went wide receiver heavy, by round 4 and 5, you're going to be needing to sniff in here on a running back. And Mark Ingram is that perfect 0 RB in the 5th round.
Perfect.
I mean, you want somebody who is consistent, and just like earlier when, talking about Jeff Radcliffe, you don't want to take risks. Mark Ingram seems to be the safest running back this year. Alex is out on Mike Williams, says he prefers to own Hunter Henry in the same offense, although Byron is fairly interested in Mike Williams, and he likes him as much as a Calvin Ridley. He says he likes Williams more, especially if Melly Gordon is going to be out. They have average exposure to him, but Alex seems to like him a lot better in standard leagues. But Mike Williams is one of those guys that I think this is when so we have the I've been to camp Alex Byron statement here that was pretty strong, because he had at that moment compared Mike Williams to essentially like a bigger Keenan Allen. And Alex was like, I'm not really into that. And then throw it up again, Shane. He says, I've been to camp, Alex.
I've been to camp, Alex.
Like, he's seen this guy. Again, Byron travels the globe to look at these guys in person. He gets so close to them, he can smell them.
You mentioned Hunter Henry before. That's got to be my favorite. You're listening to Rosterwatch voice capture that they got for the bumper. He's got that deep frog in his voice, Hunter Henry. That's probably my favorite one that they've ever got.
If we're doing handles, mine's Leonard Fournette.
Yeah, Leonard Fournette. That's a classic. You're right. That's an old-timer. That's Mount Rushmore of the voice capture.
Exactly.
So, Mike Williams is definitely somebody I am not drafting this year. It has nothing to do with him, whether I like him. It's just there's so many other options right there that it would have to be one of those things where Mike Williams fell a little bit. And this next thing that we all have to kind of bow our heads in is that we're not getting any of the absolute golden son Cooper Kupp. Okay, I think at his ADP, we have to be out. Says is just a big thumbs down. Says, what do you got to say about Cooper Kupp, the most golden son?
Yeah, I mean, I love Cooper Kupp, the player. I was all in on him last year. I just can't believe, and I know that there's been reports that he has had an Adrian Peterson-like recovery as far as ACL, and it's possible, but he hurt his ACL. He ripped his ACL, tore it in week 9 of last year. It hasn't even, been a full year since he's been badly hurt. And now you're going to pick him up and play him in round 5. I mean, I could see it a little bit in round 7, but even that feels aggressive. But in round 5 or 6, people are drafting him like he didn't even have the injury.
100%. 100%.
if I'm wrong on that, that's fine. I will be upset because he is one of my favorite players in the NFL. But less than a year, betting on him to be the player he was, it seems like a negative EV bet for me.
Yeah, and this is a shameless plug. Okay. So we'll have to write this down, guys, somewhere. Somebody write this down. Shane's really good at this. But next week, we are having Dr. Jesse Morse on the podcast. He is a real doctor. He literally said to me, "Hey, can I catch you in the morning because I have patients I need to see?" And I said, "Spoken like a true doctor, sir." Yes, of course. He is part of and runs the Fantasy Doctors on Twitter, and we're gonna have him on the show this coming Friday, assuming that you, Shane, and Dr. Jesse Morse can survive the hurricane coming up to Florida. He's also in Florida, crazy enough, and he's like, "Yeah, if I, hey, I'm there." He goes, "If I have power, I'm on the cast." Mid-hurricane. We will get 2 mid-hurricane fantasy analysts next Friday. Watch it. Love it. Cooper Kupp is somebody we will be asking about there. Round 6. Alex thinks it's a little bit too high for Miles Sanders just because, again, like in the first round, it's just a little rich. Rosterwatch has always been high on the fast starts, and this is a big thing that Rosterwatch has always talked about is, you get put in such a good position when you start fast. That may be, hey, maybe we're not in on guys like Mike Williams. Maybe we're not. But maybe they're onto something. Maybe they're thinking Mike Williams in the first 4 weeks is going to really help you get to that 4-0 victory. Then maybe, hey, if you don't like him, go ahead and trade him. But at that point, his value's high. At that point, you've started your league 4-0. You've got other players that are 0-4. They desperately need a good wide receiver. And here you are negotiating from a position of power, okay, to win your leagues, to win these trades. Okay, not these cockamamie 3-for-1s, unless they're all 3 great players for my 1 great player, of course. But we're in on Miles Sanders this year, guys. I think the Flex Network has always been high on Miles Sanders, going back to our dynasty draft a long time ago, which I came on the podcast, specifically said that my number 1 target this year in dynasty was Miles Sanders, and that was months ago. Says Shane, Miles Sanders, yes, no, maybe so, always?
Al?
Yeah, I mean the Miles Sanders outlook improved yesterday. I tweeted out a couple times. They cut off a little bit. They trimmed off a little fat off that filet mignon. They not the good marbling type, but the juicy veiny fat. They cut 2 running backs. They got rid of Josh Adams and they got rid of Wendy Smalls. Yep, Wendy Smalls. Wendy Smalls. Yeah, Wendell Smallwood. Which, by the way, I mean, the obvious joke is that would be a great name for an actor that maybe does less than on the up and up movies, right? Wendell Smallwood, or would that be the opposite? That's a bad name for him. Yeah. Now they got rid of just a couple of the annoying prickly guys that could take away touches. So the backfield is thinning out a little bit. I can see where you'd have reservations about, just going in on Miles Sanders in the 6th round, but so many this would be the counter that so many 6th-round picks bust anyway. Why not take a guy that literally could have league winning upside? And if you're risk averse, stay away. But if you don't mind taking a calculated risk in a good offense where they're going to run the ball and you like what you see in the guy, I don't have any problem taking Miles Sanders maybe as a 0 RB type of play if you've gone pass catchers in the first 3 or 4 rounds.
Again, I think you would have to go ahead and get Jordan Howard later on in the draft. If you did so, would that be a agreeable thing to do, Shane?
Honestly, no. I would take the risk of Miles Sanders in round 6. I have no interest in Jordan Howard on my team. As far as I'm concerned, at that point in the draft, I'm drafting for upside. I'm not trying to lock in this backfield because I don't think that there's ever going to be a time where Jordan Howard is going to carry the absolute workload on this team, right? So even if something was to happen to Miles Sanders, they still have Darren Sproles there. That's going to be the 3rd down back. I don't think there's ever going to be a time where Jordan Howard is going to be an every week plug and play running back 2, call it. I mean, maybe if you're desperate for a flex play, but I think that if you have Miles Sanders, you don't need to go and waste another bench spot on Jordan Howard. Play for the upside, man. We're here to win.
We're here to win. We're here to flex on our league mates. Like going back to what you says about it in round 6, there's a lot of busts anyway. So to continue the conversation is they didn't have much of Tevin Coleman, but they're looking like they would like to have a little bit more, maybe just like the Miles Sanders upside. Robbie Anderson, they're out on. Proprietary analytics, again, developed by Rosterwatch, is their wide receiver cornerback matchup tool. If you subscribe to them and get a pro membership, you can get these tools for cheaper than a cheap cup of coffee, a fair trade, cheap fair trade cup of coffee. Okay, we love fair trade, anything. Okay, they're out on Robbie Anderson, especially where he's being drafted, because he has the worst schedule among fantasy wide receivers on wide receiver cornerback matchups. But again, hearkening back to how they love Hunter Henry here, especially if you didn't go tight end early, which Rosterwatch is not a fan of tight end early. That's something that the Flex Network and Rosterwatch are divided on a little bit. But also saying that we might get a little bit too goosey right here in the 6th round if you're grabbing Duke Johnson. Says Duke Johnson 6th round or Miles Sanders 6th round. Who do you got?
Yeah, I think that's the exact, to use a roster watch term, that's a great decision point. I think that I personally would take Duke Johnson. I like the setup, and here's why. Duke Johnson, up until this point of his career, even in a Hugh Jackson poor offense in Cleveland, was able to be an elite pass catching running back, and he is a running back that has three down skills. So if he gets his 60 plus catches, and all he needs to get is about 150 carries, which I see that being the floor. He's gonna end up being like RB like 14 if you use his yards per carry that he's garnered throughout his career. So asking him to get 150 carries, like in the past, Duke Johnson's been like a 70 carry, 80 carry running back. Now we're going to double his carries, keep his catches where they are. I think that's a projectable RB2 in the 6th round. Miles Sanders, he might have more upside, who knows? But there's certainly a floor is like 0, as we know. I don't think his floor could be like he gets 6 to 8 touches up until like week 11 where he busts out. We don't know. I think Duke Johnson, obviously when the price was the 7th, 8th, 10th round, you were happy. If you've gone wide receiver tight end early, he's the perfect guy to stick in there, and happy to have him as your RB2. I like the setup for Duke.
Hey Shane, Alex loves Josh Gordon on the 6-7 turn. What do you think?
Man, you guys know how I feel on Josh Gordon. I feel like, maybe it's just kind of the pessimist in me. As a Patriots fan, I love that he's on the team, but I just feel like I don't think that Josh Gordon's going to have the massive upside that everybody keeps projecting him to have. With that being said, though, I would be okay with taking Josh Gordon on a 6-7 turn. But, if I'm staring at Christian Kirk or Josh Gordon, I would rather push the button on a Christian Kirk or even a Curtis Samuel over a Josh Gordon at this point.
At this point in the podcast, this question came about. Can you rise precipitously or just fall precipitously? Shane?
By definition, doesn't it have to fall?
That's a good point.
Right?
I don't know. This was debated. Sure. This was literally debated when the cockamamie Byron Lambert channeled the trash man by referencing gravitational force in his example of precipitously falling and or rising. Byron, although, says he's getting a lot of Jarvis Landry in the 6th. He is completely out on Phillip Lindsay, but says he loves him some Miles Sanders and would love to get some shares of Miles Sanders in the 6th. Moving on to the 7th round, this is, of course, where the Flex Network and Rosterwatch communities merge. We love drafting Christian Kirk, Curtis Samuel right here, either one or the both in the next 2 rounds, especially in home leagues where most of your home league people do not even know who Christian Kirk is or Curtis Samuel. This is where you flex but Alex also says he loves himself some Latavius Murray. Do we like Latavius Murray in the 7th round, Shane?
Yeah, I would take Latavius Murray in the 7th round. I mean, even if he isn't as talented as Mark Ingram, I still think that anytime that you're going to have that thunder and lightning type approach in a New Orleans Saints, Drew Brees led offense, you're going to want a piece of that offense. So, I mean, Latavius Murray is the kind of guy who he might have a little bit more weekly volatility, right? Especially if he's going to be touchdown dependent. But at the end of the year, I mean, range of outcomes, couldn't you see Murray getting like 9 or 10 touchdowns just because he goes and he gets into the end zone because they just have so many opportunities? That's a guy that you're totally happy with as your running back 3 or 4, keep him in your flex spot, and he's going to put up points for you more often than not.
Shane, I just wanted to ask Shane, if Alvin Kamara, God forbid, got hurt and was out for the season today, where would you rank Murray in your running back rankings for the season?
I think that Murray would probably go all the way up to a 3rd round, 4th round, right? I mean, I think right around the Derrick Henry.
First round pick.
You think so? You would rather take him over like a Derrick Henry?
I mean, if I'm it would be on the 1-2 turn. The main running back in the Saints offense, and that it would be Latavius Murray on a running team. I don't see why you wouldn't make him somewhere.
Leonard Fournette. So you take him ahead of Leonard Fournette. Like that's kind of where we're at, right? Like we talk about opportunity. We talk about like an offense that is obviously going to be productive this year, but then you look at the talent level. Like talent wise, Latavius Murray is not as good as Leonard Fournette, but obviously the Saints are better.
Correct. Yeah. I'm just saying, like, it would be third. You're exercising a little caution, which is probably the right thing to do. But I think ultimately, drafters with something at stake would probably, where are you going to get a running back on? I mean, where's Alvin Kamara going? I know he's super talented, but he's top of the first. Yeah, right, top 3. So, it's Latavius Murray or James Conner. If Latavius Murray was the locked-in RB1 with no threat from Alvin Kamara, it's an interesting debate, but he would go somewhere in the 2nd round at the absolute latest.
That is the most cockamamie debate I've ever had in my life.
Well, I know. Well, it circles back to what we were talking about. Is Latavius Murray a good pick in the 7th round? And the answer is he's an excellent pick in the 7th round, because not only will he have standalone RB2 value likely on certain weeks, he has top 12 overall RB upside. So where are you going to get that in the 7th round? It doesn't exist. It exists with Latavius Murray. So he's a great pick in the 7th round for that exact reason.
Shane, go ahead. What were you going to say, Shane?
No, just and his name's escaping me, but the Saints offensive lineman that they got from the Seattle trade,
Unger.
Yeah, it was Unger. Thank you.
Yeah.
Who recently retired? Does that create any reservations? Because to me, like Alvin Kamara is the kind of guy who can probably get around that. Whereas I don't know. I feel like Latavius Murray needs to have a strong offensive line to be productive.
Yeah, I mean, it's certainly a factor. And again, maybe I'm being overly aggressive, but I just don't. Drafters would take him in the 2nd round. And yes, the center is always the key to an offensive line. The Saints without him have a top 5, top 6 offensive line. I think at the when you're talking about a top 5, top 6 offensive line, we're not talking about even if we're talking about league average offensive line. I just think that the opportunity is king there. And Latavius Murray is not a slug. He's capable. He can still catch the ball. I know that Rosterwatch has hated him for years, but he's in a really good spot right now.
He's produced. That's the bottom line, right? Even if you don't love a guy, you have to admit in the end, and that's what Alex says. He's like, look, and we've never been big fans of this guy, but when he produces, he's a guy that you're content to have in your fantasy lineup.
So thanks everybody for tuning in. Still, we are reviewing we are establishing and creating our brain love child, Rosterwatch Rewatch, a Talking Dead of sorts, an after show to episode 158, Rosterwatch. Favorite picks and fades of 2019 in fantasy football by round. We are here at round 8. And we agree with Alex that it's absolutely cockamamie that any defense gets selected here. And of course, we will then flex when they do, you can select guys that have fallen from the previous mentions here in the 8th round. Pretty much again, like we said in the first round, there's really no bad pick. Here, same thing goes with round 8. If a Latavius Murray falls to round 8, if Curtis Samuel is in round 8, my favorite guy that's falling on draft boards right now is Allen Robinson. I just sit and I wait. I just wait to see if the league lets him fall. And because we're going to jump up and take him right here. But really, the absolute pick here to go with is the fresh squeezed one, Darius Juice. He is 100% our fresh squeezed fantasy player of the 8th round, if he even makes it there by the time your drafts happen. And Alex Dunlap is 100% with us on the Juice. Says, is the Juice as fresh squeezed as it could be here in the 8th round, or are you a little nervous? How do you feel about the Juice?
Yeah, I'm heavily invested. I'm a little dubious if it's going to work out. I needed to. I planted a flag with Darius Geis when he was hurt last season. I moved up and got him in a lot of dynasty leagues. I know Shane's going to talk about how much he likes him as well. There wasn't before the draft. I didn't see a ton of difference between Darius Geis and Saquon Barkley as a pure running back, but we have to face some hard facts. Washington's not projected to be a great offense. Their star offensive lineman is holding out. Case Keenum's their quarterback. There's a lot of unknowns here. Adrian Peterson is an alpha personality that they kept on the roster to actually get some touches. Chris Thompson, when healthy, produces as a pass-catching running back. So there's a lot of reasons to be scared here. Darius Geis has had some setbacks with his recovery. He looks healthy now. That's what's important. Love the talent. I think he's appropriately priced based on the risk, but I could see him, being a top 15 running back easily because when, I witnessed what you witnessed, he just looks like one of the sickest runners the NFL is going to have for a long time to come, hopefully.
He's very, very similar in my eyes to Leonard Fournette. If we're drafting Leonard Fournette as high as he is going, I understand why we could be goosey, especially when it comes to injuries. You'd like to be a year removed fully before you've 100% bought back into a player.
He just doesn't have. I was just going to say, Leonard Fournette faces zero threat to his job or his carries, whereas Geis, who I like, he faces multiple threats. He reminds me of a guy swatting away mosquitoes. It's like Adrian Peterson, Chris Thompson, just
Samaje Perine.
Well, he was cut yesterday.
Yeah, I know, but just the idea is that he's having to keep swatting at these swatting backs.
That was the difference. And, I'm really excited to hear Shane's take on this because I know he's all in. And I want to hear positive vibes on Geis because I really do want him to be successful. He's probably my favorite player in the NFL so far.
So before we get Shane in here, let's describe your trade in Dynasty, Shane. Dynasty, Shane literally traded the entire Atlanta backfield for the entire Redskins backfield. That included the Juice and AP. Shane, go ahead, flex.
Okay, here we go. We're going to flex. Alan Seslowsky, you're killing me, dude. You're absolutely killing me here. Do we actually think, people, I get that Adrian Peterson is an alpha personality. Adrian Peterson is 34 years old. It's not like they're paying him $4, $5, $6 million a year where they want to give him the ball. They're paying him $1.8 million, I think, is the cap hit this year. I think it's about $2.5 million in actual money into AP's pocket this year. I don't think that if Washington actually wants to win games, I think that they're going to use Darius Geis. I mean, yes, there was that fear, and this is. I'm glad you brought this up, Matt, because when a month and a half ago, during the offseason, there was the discussion that Darius Geis had a setback with a hamstring issue, and that one of the guys it was the Baron. He came to our league chat and said, "Guys, I'm out on Geis. Who wants him? Who wants him?" Right. So of course, Hung went in with a bunch of cockamamie offers. I'm sure you guys did too. But I was thinking, my team, I'm not a win now team, and I think that a guy like Devonta Freeman is a win now kind of player. I don't really trust him in the next year or two after this season. And so would I rather go and trade Devonta Freeman as well as Ito Smith for the Darius Geis and Adrian Peterson backfield? I think that, okay, Al, yes, I'm going to give you that AP is probably going to take a number of touches away this year. But next year, which is really the play for Darius Geis, I think that he is going to become the alpha in the league. I think that people are going to remember why he was so heavily talked about in the dynasty world last offseason. And I think that at this point, Dwayne Haskins is going to have a season under his belt. Your boy, Terry McLaurin, is going to be producing. I think that Washington is going to be decent next year. And so in the 8th round, or I mean, honestly, he's really going in the 7th round. I find more in drafts nowadays. I am 100% in on taking Darius Geis. He's an elite talent that can help you win your league. I mean, you guys are talking about Miles Sanders in the 6th round. Give me Darius Geis in the 7th or the 8th round as that flex play every single week. I love Darius Geis.
Every week, let the juice be fresh squeezed. Okay, late in the 8th round, Byron is saying that in a weird world, Corey Davis might be just a look like we might dive to the left, dive to the right, and find our way into a Corey Davis. We are 100% out on Corey Davis, but it's not to say, I mean, he legit just went undrafted in my 15 round. So, I mean, yeah, it's maybe a little high for Corey Davis at 8 or in the 8th round, but you just don't know, where you're at in your draft by the time this comes. Maybe you've got swindled, maybe you got sniped, maybe all the guys we wanted go in the top 4 rounds for some odd reason, and you don't want to pick a quarterback here. Corey Davis might be the play, but Alex absolutely hates Corey Davis, and we're not even going to spend time on Corey Davis. Going to round 9, Dante Pettis is having a real big fall this year. Starting, I believe, I don't have the ADPs in front of me, but Dante Pettis probably had to been start somewhere in the 7th round, maybe the 6th round. He's falling to the 9th and past. He is dealing with, it seems like, a little injury right now. Not only that, but I mean, Deebo Samuel is just one of the flex networks, just darlings. And we love Deebo. We love Deebo so much that we believe that any second that Deebo gets to run with the ones and run as a number 1 receiver, he is just going to take it and run with it. And it kind of seems like if you're going Dante Pettis in the 9th round, you might get swindled. What do you think, Says?
Yeah, I mean, Dante Pettis has had definitely, he was a 5th rounder when best ball season started. He was routinely going in the 5th, 6th round, and he's had some negative buzz throughout the offseason. And who knows? He's dropped to a price now, which is it's palatable. If the first 2 weeks he's getting 3 targets a week, and I think in the 9th round he's an easy cut. You're not too bound to him. I'm personally not drafting Dante Pettis. I like both of the other receivers later. I think people are forgetting about Marquise Goodwin. He was a 5th round pick last year. He got hurt. Jimmy G's back, who was his, Goodwin was his favorite target. Pettis could pan out, and the price that you're having to pay now is probably worth the investment, but I just haven't found myself. You really find out who you like when you're on the clock, and I've passed on Pettis multiple times in favor of Godwin and Deebo late as well. So that's basically where I stand on it.
We love that idea. We love arbitrages, just like Shane had said. Please stay tuned. The Flex Network will be presenting our top 3 boldest calls per, says Shane and I, here to end this thing. But and we're close. We're in round 9. We're only going round 10, reviewing it and talking about it. But Dante Pettis definitely an out in round 9. Byron says, though, if you're in a standard league, and I know we talked about Miles Sanders, if you're in a standard league and you're really in trouble, Jordan Howard probably has to be your selection here in a standard league, but let's please not do that. Otherwise, both the Flex Network and Rosterwatch basically stating that this entire round we're out on it. It's almost too high to go Kyler Murray right here. And Alex says, it's cockamamie as this round is round 9. He has been thinking, or he has been seeing a little bit of Marquez Valdez in his draft. So do we like MVS in round 9? I mean, over a Dante Pettis, or are we just going to flex on our league mates and go Kyler Murray every time here, Shane? Kyler Murray's probably got to be the play here.
Well, as Alex said, or was it Byron who said about Joe Public drafting their defenses in round 9 here? No, man, if Kyler Murray is here, you take your quarterback at this point, because we've loaded up on all of those skill positions at this point. And when you get an option like Kyler Murray, who can go and pretty much put up a floor with his rushing capabilities, I mean, the sky is the limit. And in the 9th round, especially in a 1 quarterback league, I mean, flex on your damn league, people. We're in it to win it. You get a Kyler Murray, and frankly, win your damn league.
Says, what do you got to say about playing in a standard league? Says,
yeah, I mean, I don't get the playing in a standard league. That play the song for that, man. Play the song. Play the damn song.
Ani Sridhar.
Yeah,
cue up the song. He's got it. I'm sure he does. Anyway, we will end the Rosterwatch rewatch show here with the final round, the round 10. Bull said again, another cockamamie round. We're always interested in the true golden son, Anthony Miller, at the end, getting a lot of good exposure to Kalen Ballage. If you didn't go Kyler Murray, maybe a Lamar Jackson here. And then they go on to talk about players they just like at the end of the rounds. Tony Pollard being one, Devin Singletary, of course. Devin Singletary shooting up the draft board. You will not be able to get him after the round 10. He says Devin Singletary looks like a juiced up Jaquiz Rogers, which I definitely believe that. Jamison Crowder here. The justice has been served. Justice Hill, Alexander Madison, of course, Deebo Samuel here. So these are all guys we love too. And we think that this Rosterwatch podcast was one of the best of the entire year. Rosterwatch. We got a comment here. Wow, round 10 too high for Kyler Murray. That is laughable coming from Trash Man. That's a truther right there. We love Kyler Murray, even in the 10th, okay, even in the 9th. But here we are. Thank you guys for tuning in to our first ever inaugural Rosterwatch rewatch. We hope you enjoyed it. We will be hopefully doing this more and more just to create more content. We think Rosterwatch is so freaking dope. They're the coolest show on SiriusXM. Tune into them and you will be baptized in fantasy goodness coming from Rosterwatch. Please follow them at Rosterwatch. Download and subscribe and retweet. Go to Apple Podcasts, rate and review, and follow the Flex Network at the Flex Network 1. Okay, we are going to get into our 3 boldest calls of the year. Each of us, this is what you've all been waiting for. Yes, Alan Seslowski, hit me with your first bold call of the fantasy season this year. These are the things that we are going to plant our flag on the just tallest hill of fantasy greatness. Says, what are you going to stake your name behind this year?
Well, I think it's important to define bold call. Everyone's probably going to have a little bit of a different definition for it. For me, as I told you guys offline, is that it's what's a player's highest percentile outcome. What happens if everything breaks correctly and nothing goes wrong? The 85th, 80th percentile of their outcomes. Now, you can, and so it's got to be believable, even if it's a high range outcome. Now, you could define it differently as you name yours, but my first bold call, and I firmly believe this is in a possible range of outcomes. Lamar Jackson finishes as the QB1.
Lamar Jackson, QB1. You heard it here first. The Flex Network's bold calls season long says at Alan Seslowski on Twitter says
the
Lamar
Yeah.
Jackson QB1.
The quick rationale is 1,000 yards plus rushing is in his range of outcomes. I could see a situation where he gets 7 or 8 rushing touchdowns in addition to about 19 to 24 passing touchdowns. The receivers that they drafted all work out well. He still gets about 3,800 yards passing, maybe 4,000 yards if it all breaks right. Lamar Jackson could be that league winner, a guy that we're talking about. Should we take him in the second round next year?
In the second round.
The same way we're talking about Pat Mahomes, basically.
Oh, man. Actually, the same way that we're talking about Deshaun Watson, likely. I mean, because that's probably exactly the same type of outlook that you're looking at, is you're saying that he can run as good as Deshaun. Can he pass as good as Deshaun? And you're saying this year, QB1, Lamar Jackson will find that upside.
Yeah, somebody that I follow closely, and I'm excited to hear Shane's. He's itching at the bit to get it, and he's been teasing these to me on our chat app. But also, an analyst that I saw and trust said that he thought Lamar Jackson was a better pure runner than Michael Vick. So that's, again, Logan put up 3,500 passing yards, 1,250 rush. That would be insane.
With 8 rushing touchdowns and 27 pass touchdowns. Get out of here. That'd be the best quarterback season of all time.
All right, let's move on. Lamar Jackson, QB1, first bold call.
Shane, your first bold call.
Alan, you kind of took it away from me a little bit here. And it's not quite as bold as Lamar Jackson as your number 1 quarterback. But I think that with the Laramie Tunsil trade to Houston, I think you can book it. Deshaun Watson is going to finish this year as the QB1 over Patrick Mahomes, over Lamar Jackson. You talk about Lamar Jackson's rushing upside. I think that Deshaun Watson has that. But one of the things that makes a quarterback call it a one-hit wonder to an elite long-term quarterback, a guy like Deshaun Watson knows how to actually throw the damn ball. And you look at who does he have? He has the number 1 wide receiver in the game today. I'm saying it, DeAndre Hopkins. Then you finally give him an offensive line. You look at a guy like Duke Johnson, who we're all high on. How is Duke going to get his points? He's not going to get his points by running the damn ball. He's going to get his points by catching the ball. Who's going to throw him the ball? Oh, that's right, Deshaun Watson. I think that Houston's all in this year. And I know that their offense isn't as good as the Rams, but they still have a very stout offense. To me, I get an LA Rams kind of vibe out of Houston this year. You got your elite wide receiver with DeAndre Hopkins. You have Will Fuller, who is hyper efficient when he's actually on the damn field. They traded for Kenny Stills, who I think is going to take a little bit more of the Will Fuller touches than of my boy, who maybe we'll talk about a little bit later, Kiki QT. And I mean, give me a guy with weapons, with talent, with upside, with sex appeal. Deshaun Watson, QB1.
To validate what you said there, Shane, Evan Silva just tweeted out this morning that in his rankings, he actually moved Watson above Mahomes in his top 150.
Whoa. If Evan Silva's calling it, it's got to be true.
Well, I guess the point is that I agree with everything you said, except is it a bold call?
Oh, you're going to take this away from me.
No, I'm saying as usual, Shane, you are rooted in logic and sense. I think it's a compliment.
It's not that bold, he's saying, dude. Not that bold. It's not that bold for the QB2 in fantasy redraft season to be QB1 overall.
In fact, it's a little bit of a nutless pick.
Here we go.
Okay. He promises to make it up. Okay. My first bold call is in an offense where we have kind of been seeing that the WR1 of this team has absolutely 0 yards run after contact. He catches the ball, he falls down. Okay. Now that is great for splash plays, but that is not great for total WR1 fantasy output. I have Mr. Chris Godwin as a top 8 fantasy wide receiver of the entire year. It's a bold call. I'm not going to go number one, WR1, but Julio. I mean, you got a Julio Jones. I mean, you got a murderer's row of wide receivers there in your top 5. And it's Chris Godwin here is the number 2 on Tampa Bay's offense. So I'm not going to go that bold, but I'm going to say Chris Godwin finishes as your 8th best fantasy football wide receiver on the year. Book it. Says, is that bold enough for you or not at all?
I mean, I think it's a good call. I think it's a good call. I wouldn't even bet against it. So does it, bold call? I'm not sure, but I think it's, Godwin's certainly a trendy player. He could end up, being you're saying a top 8 fantasy player. I like it. I think it's a really smart call. Again, bold call, questionable there. I want a little more. I want 80th percentile outcomes here. I don't know what's going on.
80th percentile outcome is Chris Godwin is a wide receiver 2. He's the second wide receiver on his team next to a guy who has been a number 1 wide receiver every year he's played in the league. So now he would not only have to usurp the number 1 receiver on his own offense, but then go ahead of guys like Michael Thomas.
Yeah, it's a good call. This is the kind of reaction. I'm not looking for like, oh God, it would never happen. Or I'm not looking like, oh yeah, it would be good. I'm looking for like, whoa, okay, I never thought about that. That's the kind of reaction I'm looking for.
Well, those are not the reactionable efforts I have ranked up here, okay? Geez, says, hit me with your second most boldest call of the year.
Okay, second most bold call of the year is, I think that O.J. Howard will be the tight end 1, and we'll be talking about him as the consensus top 1 or 2 next year. When he played last year, he was unbelievable. Some of the most acrobatic catches, long speed, good air yards, great yards after the catch. This offense has been supercharged with Arians. He is a star, and he's super young. As long as he stays healthy, O.J. Howard finishes his tight end 1.
Tight end 1. I don't, here's my problem with that is it is bold, just like you were saying, it's definitely bold. My whole thing is he's already being drafted as your he's sometimes going ahead of Ertz as tight end 3 overall drafted.
And here's why I would call it a bold call, but again, it's because he's not being considered in that elite tier at all. Like he's thought of as the next one down. So what I'm saying is, if you move from tier 4 to tier 3, that's good. But when you get into that elite tier, and I'm saying that he has a pretty decent shot, a 20% shot of being at the top of that tier for next year, that's why I think it's bold. If somebody took O.J. Howard where they're drafting, Travis Kelce in the early second round, I think you would say, whoa, that's bold. So I think when it's all said and done, that's where the dust settles.
That's a good bold call. We have a bold call from a listener here, about to put it up on the screen. Boom. At Sully from Houston says Mike Davis will have 50 catches this year. Bold call over Tariq Cohen, and he's a Chicago Bears truther. What do you guys think about that? I
think that's damn bold. I don't know.
That's bold.
To me, Tariq Cohen showing that he's going to be the pass catching back in that offense. I don't see it. Sorry,
Mike
Sully.
Davis is the type of running back that when Mike Davis gets signed to your team, you actually hate it as a running back that's on the team, because no matter what, Mike Davis will come into practice and make you look like you're not trying hard enough. And that's exactly what coaches hate.
What are you talking about?
No.
Love that.
Coaches hate when you are the running back that they have already invested so much into, and then a Mike Davis comes in and makes you look, like you're not trying hard. Coaches hate when younger, or not even younger, or when other guys that are on the team want to go get that position and they show out like that. Coaches never want to see that, realistically, especially not when they've invested a high draft pick in David Montgomery or invested in a complete third down system back in a Tariq Cohen. They don't even need a Mike Davis on the team. So why is Mike Davis coming in here and showing like he needs to get 50 catches on the year? Okay, that is the worst. We should have asked Coach Bobby Ramsey about that. Okay, anyway, bold call. Okay, Mike Davis with, here we go. Look how many catches he had in Seattle. Same thing. You're right. Pete Carroll had to ship Mike Davis off just so that Penny, their first-round draft pick, can really even get on the field. So bold call. Shane, bold call number 2 on the fantasy football season.
All right, Sully, I'm glad you're hanging out, buddy, because my bold call is that Allen Robinson is going to finish as a wide receiver 1. Granted, it's going to be a back-end wide receiver 1. But look, he's another year removed from that offense. He's playing with a guy like Mitchell Trubisky, who, albeit has been comped by the infamous Matt Kelly from Roto Underworld, that he is just a Blake Bortles comp. But look what Allen Robinson did with Blake Bortles. He put up 1,400 yards. I mean, he's going to be the alpha in that offense. They have another year together. I mean, the offense is, I think, going to be a lot better than people look at. They've got a strong running game. They have 3 legitimate running backs. They have our boy, the Golden Son, Anthony Miller. And the biggest issue that Allen Robinson went up against later in his Jacksonville career was the fact that he was being double coveraged, right? He wasn't as productive when he was double covered, which some wide receivers have the ability to do it no matter what. I mean, I look at an AB, for example, but Allen Robinson, defenses aren't going to be able to key in on only him, which means that he's going to have that opportunity to go and score a monster 1,200 to 1,400 yards. I could see him getting double-digit touchdowns this year. I mean, Mitchell Trubisky, for all of his negativity, I mean, he had the most QB number 1 weeks last year, and he won people millions of dollars in DFS. I think that you pair that with Allen Robinson, who is a monster, who's comped to a guy like Dez Bryant, and man, he's going to feast in the end zone. He's going to get the yards. Allen Robinson finishes as a wide receiver 1.
You can't even double cover Allen Robinson because then you leave open Anthony Miller, Taylor Gabriel.
That's exactly
Tariq Cohen.
And that's the point. You can't do it.
You can't.
Yeah.
Trey Burton,
I'm happy that you think that. And I think that is a good bold call. I think
that's very nice, Shane. You think that?
No, I think that's a great call. I don't know why Allen Robinson. I didn't mean for the faint praise because it is not. I think that's really. That's a great call. I think Allen Robinson. There's going to be a list of players at the end of even by week 4 that were like, I can't believe I didn't see it. I already said Mark Ingram was one of them. Allen Robinson, I think, is going to be another one. It's a crime if you let him slip past the 5th round.
It is a crime, and we will be absorbing all that crime onto our fantasy teams this year as we flex down our home league drafts. This is my second bold call. You guys may call me a Chicken Little for this one, okay? Because this is my bold. I'm going to first explain. If you have to explain yourself, then it's maybe not as bold as it might have been. But I have Damian Williams top 5 RB on the season. It's too much of it. Go ahead, Shane.
What about LaShawn McCoy?
What about LaShawn McCoy? I don't care about LaShawn.
That's the right answer.
Here's the thing. I don't care about LaShawn. I don't care about Darwin Thompson. You know what I do care about is the fact that you're going to be seeing on multiple occasions Damian Williams not come out of the game. 3rd down back is exactly the only other thing on that team. We talk about guys that are going to potentially take away carries. You're not going to give Darwin Thompson the ball on 1st down. You're not going to give Darwin Thompson or LaShawn McCoy the ball on 2nd down. And when you do not pull Damian Williams off of the field on 3rd down, then Damian Williams will become a top 5 RB this year. But I definitely chicken littled out, saying I could have gone even bolder that he'd be top 3. But I just like, obviously, our 4 monster running backs. I could say he would be 4th. Go ahead.
Do you think that, this is just a question, does Andy Reid like his workhorse running backs in his offenses?
Does Andy Reid like Damian Williams last year?
Does he like his workhorse backs in his offenses?
Andy Reid loves his running backs, okay? He loves them. Okay, and that's exactly why they're going to grab LaShawn McCoy, okay? Familiarity, if I said that properly. Here's the thing. LaShawn is older, more broken down than anybody we talked about previously on this podcast, okay? He had the worst season ever last year as a starting RB. To think that LaShawn McCoy is going to take away any production from Damian Williams is a travesty. Okay? Darwin Thompson is like 5'8", 198 pounds, runs a 4.6. Why would we give that guy the ball?
Yeah, you know,
Go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to say I have a little bit of a dynasty pivot on Damian Williams. I think what's really clear here is that the Chiefs are going to be a candidate for one of these awesome 2020 running backs. So dynasty wise, if Damian Williams does have a couple of good games, I'd be looking to get out. The fact that they even brought in McCoy means that they're not satisfied with their depth, or they would have done it. They cut Carlos Hyde, they brought him in. Again, I just think that LaShawn McCoy is set up to be a fantasy mosquito, an annoyance, where he is just going to take from the value of Damian Williams. Darwin Thompson, what the coaches are saying is that he picked up pass blocking really quickly, and that is the key to getting on the field. Again, right now, I don't think he's going to be a fantasy factor. Damian Williams certainly will be the lead back, and I think it is a bold call to say he'll finish top 5, because I think a little of his upside was capped with all the moves that happened over the last few days for him.
Says number 3, final, last bold call of the year, something we can really stake our names behind. Season long says final bold call of the year. What do you got?
Okay, you set me up perfectly for this one. My bold call is that the Flex Network podcast will triple in viewers by this time next year.
Oh, flexed.
Flex, baby.
Oh, damn. I didn't have that one on the list. Fuck. I missed it. No, what a bold call. That's not even a bold call, says. That's
a conservative.
Yeah, we're talking about not bold calls. Come on now.
Hey,
yeah.
all right. I will say it'll. What's the? Is it? If you don't say triple, what's the next word for a multiple of 4? Quadruple. Quadruple. Of course it is quadruple. And then what's 5? What's 5 times 5? Centuple.
Centuple, I think. Yeah.
All right. So it was mostly because I didn't know those words. They weren't in my SAT vocabulary, so that's why I went with triple. So, but anyway, I like what we're doing here. The feedback has been good. So my bold call is that we continue to see steady growth, and that our bond as broadcasters and as friends becomes even stronger.
Boom.
So
boom. Rocked. We just
rocked. I got to hold back a chair.
Hey guys, just to let everybody know right now, we are finished in our redraft content. Week 1 is starting next week. Again, just to plug us a little bit, we've got the doctor coming on next Friday. Next Friday, our Flex Finder podcast will debut. We will be helping anyone in season long with trying to find the flex play. Every week, it's going to be released on Saturday, so you can use your podcasts. We have, or you can use our podcast content to help you with your start sits. But wait, okay, we're not starting next week, but right after week 1, we have also a waiver wire podcast. Okay, where says at season long says, at Alan Seslowski. Okay, we'll be with Shane, and together they will help you through your waiver wires. Okay, that's a big deal. Rosterwatch also will be doing a waiver wire podcast, as we are a nation and we have the best fantasy content out there. Shane, go ahead. Go ahead.
I just want to say,
You're done crying.
I'm done crying. The tears have been rolled back. I think one of the big things that we're really trying to do here at the Flex Network is we're trying to build the network, right? So we're trying to get more and more guests on. And actually, Flex Mike and I, we're going to be sitting down with Christopher Anthony Kidd next Tuesday, who's a freelance producer with The Athletic.
We don't want to talk about any real names, but he's a freelance producer for some other entity, but he is going to be a fire guest. You're right. I forgot about that.
Yeah, you can't forget about these things. Look,
I can't forget.
What we're allowed to say, what we're not allowed to say. I get a little excited, but there's going to be more guests. We're going to have more content. It's just the network's going to grow, people.
Say what you want to say. It's better to ask for forgiveness than permission.
That's the way I see it.
Well, also Flex Mike is going to be interviewed. He goes to church with a former Harlem Globetrotter, which will be a very awesome cast. He also has I think it's a former Colorado Rockies outfielder. So it's going to be a couple great guests. We had Coach Bobby Ramsey on the cast already, Derrick Henry's high school head football coach, and we again hope to continue to build this thing with awesome guests and content and everything for your viewing pleasure. Again, our brainchild and our brainwaves through these airwaves and our social media and everything we're doing. Shane, final bold call of the season. It's hard to top Sez's. Had I known that, would have been the last one, but it's like coming off.
Sez is always teasing us. Okay. I hope this is bold enough for you, Alan. I hope it's bold enough for you, especially after the Kenny Stills trade. But I am stamping that Kiki QT will finish as a wide receiver 2 this year. And the reason for that is because I'm not worried about Kenny Stills. Kiki might miss the first week, but this is a guy who's shown that he can put up targets. I mean, you've got, of course, Hopkins on the outside. We've already talked about how Deshaun Watson is going to finish as the QB1. Give me his number 2 wide receiver in the offense who's just going to be gobbling up targets in the slot. He's going to be a monster in PPR. He's going to be getting 7 to 8 receptions, probably 80 to 100 yards, sprinkling a few touchdowns. Kiki QT, wide receiver 2.
Yeah, you mean kind of like a Jarvis Landry-esque type of season, right?
Jarvis Landry plus.
Okay, yeah. I mean that certainly is bold because people have pushed Kiki QT off their drafting radar.
He's off. He's
going in the 12th, 13th round now, especially after that trade. So yeah, to stand by Kiki and his talent, I think that is bold, and I think the hurricane winds are blowing, and Shane is standing there with his bold call flag.
Bold call flag. Somebody put that up on the ticker, please. Okay. Well,
and don't forget the L when you put it up there.
You know what? Here's my thing. It just like with everything in my life, the finish is anticlimactic. Okay. Here's the thing. Okay. I don't know if I just truthered out last night as I was just going through the annals of logs in my memory and my brain and just what I love and the bold calls. But I'm gonna come out on a limb and say this, okay? And I don't know how bold this is or not, but I will say that 1-for-1 with equal production on the year this year in fantasy football, I have Dalvin Cook and Chris Carson equal this year in fantasy football. That puts Chris Carson in the top 10 running backs of the league this year in PPR scoring, and you can get him in the 5th round sometimes in your home leagues. He needs to be a 1st-round draft pick. I would even go so far to be as bold as saying that Nick Chubb and Chris Carson will have equal fantasy production this year. Bold call.
Love it.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's hard to argue. Hard to argue with brilliance.
Again, anticlimactic, really.
No. We need to invest in some sound effects so we can so we can pepper in some laughter or applause or just something, because I'm sitting here. There you go. I'm sitting here shaking my head in agreement, but as you know, shaking your head on audio conversations doesn't always translate well.
Doesn't translate at all. Anyway, guys, thank you for listening in. This was our Rosterwatch Rewatch episode uno with our bold calls of the fantasy football season. Please follow Rosterwatch at Rosterwatch, but also follow the Flex Network at the Flex Network 1. Shane, how can everybody? Yes, with the 1 on the end, because of course. Shane, how can everybody find you, brother?
Find me on Twitter at Seeley_Shane.
Seeley, SEELEY_Shane. At Alan Seslowski. Please tell the world how can they actually spell that and follow you.
You know, it's ALAN, and then Seslowski's pretty easy. It's 3 parts of 3. It's Ses, Low, and Sky. SESLOW, Sky, SKY. Alan, Ses, Low, Sky. Seslowski.
Alan Seslowski, and I am the arbitrator of the at the Flex Network one. That's usually me. So if there is cockamamie, late, ruby, grapefruit, white claw posts on Twitter, you know it's me. It's definitely not these guys. And if there's a cockamamie take on there, you obviously again know it's me and not these two smart individuals who are holding me up down this path as I am stumbling and rumbling and bumbling. We are the Flex Network. Thank you for tuning in. We will see you this Tuesday and Friday for our first Finding the Flex Finder podcast, week 1. We are the Flex Network.
May all your